Welcome to 10-5, the official podcast of the OPP Association. I'm one of your co-hosts, Scott Mills.
And I'm your other co-host, Emily Brown. The OPP Association represents nearly 10,000 members of the Ontario Provincial Police in Canada. And we're dedicated to keeping our members and the public informed about key issues that impact policing across Ontario.
Welcome to 2025, everyone, and this is our 134th episode since we launched the podcast in June of 2021, and we are very honored to kick off 2025 with a feature episode here with a very decorated guest. Dr. Peter Collins is a 30-year veteran OPP Forensic Psychiatrist, and he's also much more, which you're going to hear about. So welcome, Dr. Collins.
Please, it's Peter, not Doctor.
How come I knew you were going to say that, Peter?
Well, it's a pleasure to be invited, and it's only the second podcast I've ever done. So I hope it goes well. The first one did. And I look forward to speaking to you both.
Good. We're happy you agreed to come and join us today, Peter. So welcome.
Thanks.
Well, Peter, I know I've known you and known of your work for several years, and I know you live a fairly humble existence. You're rarely mentioned in the news or anywhere else, for that matter. However, you've been involved in some of the largest criminal investigations in Ontario's history, and with a very important role at that, and that being the forensic psychiatrist. And we know that you're quite humble about it, and this is probably going to be a rare glimpse into your professional life. So I was wondering, just to start off, Peter, could you walk us through your career before we get to some of the questions we prepared for you? And I'm just going to give everybody a warning. Peter gave us a kind of condensed bio, which we were looking at, and then he further sent his CV, and it was 96 pages long. So this is going to be quite interesting, Peter. So over to you.
Well, admittingly, I have to keep a CV because of my faculty position in the Faculty of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry, Division of Forensic Psychiatry at the University of Toronto. And also because I still have a staff position, albeit I'm on permanent loan to the police, both by the university and by the Center for Addiction and Mental Health. So they're very they are very specific on having an up-to-date CV. So hence the length, because I've been doing this for some time. I am a criminologist, and I worked as a criminologist, and then decided to go to medical school. Didn't know whether I would do forensic pathology or forensic psychiatry. But when I worked as a criminologist, and even when I was studying criminology, doing my master's in criminology, I was getting involved in certain aspects of policing. I had a placement with the Ottawa Police in 1977 and 1978, and that's when I was involved, so to speak, with the first homicide in my career. And after working for close to 3 years as a criminologist for the Yukon Territory, I decided to expand my horizons because of those interests in the forensic world. The term forensic really means just the application of law to science or science to law. And I had those dual, not competing, but dual interests in forensic pathology and behavioral forensics. So I ended up being on the forensic pathology team at McMaster University, Hamilton General, and essentially went out to the homicide scenes with the forensic pathologist and the rest of the team for deaths between and suspicious deaths between Niagara Falls and Halton region. And again, I became academically interested in it. After my graduation, after a year of internship, I did a year of anatomical pathology, which is a prerequisite. You have to do 4 to 6 years of that before you go into forensic. And I decided after a year, and for personal reasons as well, because I didn't want to relocate, I went the behavioral side. And it was when I was doing my training in psychiatry that officers, investigators from Ottawa Police still contacted me. And when I qualified as a psychiatrist, general psychiatrist in 1989, they waived my 2-year fellowship. This is the university. Because I already had a master's in criminology and already had experience in court. And frankly, they were just shorthanded. They needed to push someone into a position. And I was contacted by detectives in Ottawa, and they wanted me to review and assist and give a behavioral analysis of what is still an unsolved homicide. It was a 16-year-old sex trade worker who was killed in the market area of Ottawa. And unknowingly, they also consulted a member of the RCMP who had just returned from a 9-month training program to train to be a criminal profiler. He was trained by the FBI in Quantico. And we found out that the two of us had been independently contacted for an analysis. People should only go to one person. And Inspector Ron McKay, that first Canadian who was trained as a criminal profiler and set up what was then the Violent Crime Analysis Section in 1990, June of 90, he asked me to join him in the section in December of 1990. So after a number of years working with him and traveling all over the country, and other people started to get involved in the section, and I was a member of the team that developed the Violent Crime Linkage Analysis System, VICLAS. And by this time in 1993, Kate Lyons, who retired as a detective superintendent from the OPP a number of years ago, she was the second Canadian. And in April of 1995, I went over to the OPP to the fledgling Behavioral Sciences Section. And as they say, the rest is history.
Absolutely amazing career you've had, Peter. Quite frankly, I feel you're irreplaceable, in my honest opinion, and I know quite a lot of the work that you have been involved with quietly on the back end. I was wondering if you could share with us some of the cases that you have worked on that are a highlight and you're proud of the outcome. I know to this day you're still getting calls at all hours of the day and the night from police investigators around the world, and we would just love to hear some of the highlights of what your work actually turned out to be in real life.
Well, you mentioned earlier that I'm kind of in the shadows, and that's on purpose because I don't talk to the media. You won't see me on TV. You won't hear me on radio. I'm doing this podcast because essentially OPP's a family to me. And I've been involved in a number of cases which the public would consider to be high profile. I don't really like to mention them because each and every case that I'm consulted on as an operational forensic psychiatrist, because that is essentially my title, with the Criminal Behavior Analysis Section, I'm an operational forensic psychiatrist. I've had a number of cases over the years, and too many cases, and sometimes they kind of meld into one. But each and every case is important because even if it's not high profile, even if it's not getting media attention, there's a victim or victims because there's families involved. And so I see it as important work. I'll mention some where I do appear in books. I'm not a fan of true crime books. To me, they're semi-fiction. And when I teach police or when I teach students, I give an example, and I give an example of the Paul Bernardo case. And there are a number of books written, but there is one in particular that was like 700 pages in length. And the only accurate thing in the entire book is I'm described as short and bald. Everything else is nonsense. The informant for the book was someone who was criticized heavily in the judicial review by Mr. Justice Archie, the late Archie Campbell. And I, don't buy these books. I will, truth be told, look at them in chapters. And I was amused that with the Russell Williams case, I'm in one of the books, which is not a bad book, actually. But in one of the books, I'm in that book refusing to be interviewed for the book. But then the author goes on and essentially speculates what my influence was on different aspects of the investigation.
Keeping it more high level, not getting into specifics of the cases, do you have any cases that maybe didn't end the way you would have liked or the way you had thought or had a twist that you didn't see coming, Peter?
Every case. We're dealing with humans. We're dealing with human behavior. And as I like to say, especially when I get involved in a different area of policing, which is assisting crisis negotiators, the person that we are dealing with, whether it be an individual in crisis who's barricaded or someone who is a serial killer, they don't read the textbook. So there are surprises all the time, and one has to adapt. Primarily, my role in these cases, they'll vary, everything from doing investigative strategies to interview strategies, working with the OPP forensic interview teams, assisting interviewers from other agencies within the province and elsewhere, and also on occasion working with covert ops, and I'm consulted on undercover operations as well. So there's no script. You try your best to predict what will happen in order to intervene appropriately. And that's what makes the job so fascinating. And Scott knows this. I'm essentially not renewing my contract after 30 years, coming up in March 2025. I'm getting old, or older. I'll be 72 in April next year, or this year coming up. This podcast is in January 2025. So, and I have spoken to the command. I've spoken to the key figures in OPP CIB. I can't give it up altogether. Intellectually, it's challenging. I I'm hoping to do 20 hours a week just with CIB and with OSEB. The negotiation part of my life, I enjoy immensely, but on average, I get woken up in the middle of the night at least once a week, and my body just can't take it anymore. I also will attend scenes or be asked to come up to where the negotiators are, and sometimes we'll go 24 hours without sleep. And my recovery is not as good as my younger days when I could pull all-nighters and then go to work the next day or go teach the next day. But as long as I'm paid higher than a Walmart greeter, I will still assist CIB in those roles. I average, well, this year is down. I've had 60 thus far negotiation call-outs compared to 89 last year. But prior to coming over to the OPP, I've been a member of the Toronto Police negotiation team with their ETF, their Emergency Task Force, since November 1992. And it's not just the OPP that call me. I'll get calls from all over the province. And last year, actually, had 3 calls from the Northwest Territories for barricades or hostage takings. Thankfully, hostage takings are generally rare. When I go down to teach in the States, they're at hostage negotiation conferences. We call it crisis negotiation, as it should be called up here in Canada. But I'm going to miss that aspect of the work. I have told Sergeant Aaron McClure, who's our lead negotiator with the OPP, that for very high-risk calls, because I've been trained in the area of negotiating in cases of kidnapping for ransom and those things, that they can still call me out, and I'll do it pro bono.
That's it's amazing work you do, Peter. It's fascinating. I think congratulations are in order. I'm not sure how you feel about having to kind of take a step back, but I'm sure that this is in your blood, and you will be, like you said, you will continue on and help anybody that comes your way. So congratulations on finally making the decision to, have some time for a little bit more time for you, a little bit more sleep in the night.
I'm kind of concerned because my family thinks I'm a dermatologist, so I don't really want to have to explain myself. So it's better that I, keep active and they don't ask any questions. But I was going to actually leave in March 2024. The OPP promised me 3 people, almost 4 years ago, that I could start training. And now nothing happened. So because of a number of different reasons that I'm not going to go into, but our Behavioral Sciences section sort of got decimated. We didn't have the capability to do criminal profiling anymore, so I become the ad hoc criminal profiler, but I don't call myself a criminal profiler. I've trained criminal profilers, including at Quantico, since the 90s. I will say that I'm do behavioral analysis, but we lost that function in the OPP, and we lost the detective sergeants who were doing our threat assessments. The person who was behind that decision erroneously thought that you could train to be a threat assessor within 6 months. Well, it takes 2 to 3 years. And I decided to stick around in order to assist with the 4 people, detective constables, who are in our threat and behavioral analysis team. We also have a very good detective sergeant who oversees them, and she is trained in threat, but also was in the program to train to be a profiler before that was discarded. And unfortunately, because of the government, not the OPP, just to backtrack, I was sole source for maybe 20 years, and then I had to apply for my own job through procurement. And it was never an issue. I was told that if I apply, because I'm the person qualified, I'll get it. But I was always concerned and sometimes amused by who else was applying. And in the past, we've had big EAP firms apply for my job. Psychologists, not psychiatrists, who their experience is more in wellness with police officers. In other words, working with officers who are having emotional difficulties. They're not operational. And in one case, a group of psychiatrists who do insurance independent medical evaluations. So the procurement has finally gone out. Lawyers were involved. It goes back and forth, and to the frustration of my command. And a month ago, the job call went out. By the time someone gets security cleared and is on the ground, I'll be gone.
It's definitely interesting, all the politics behind it, Peter. I appreciate you sharing some of that insight with us. I'm quite interested in a lot of these negotiations that you've been involved with, and often, as we all know, they're very urgent and emerging situations, and they're from all over the province, and in your case, all over Canada, and lots of times down in the States and other places in the world. Can you explain to us kind of how the operational forensic psychiatrist works, as much as you can, without compromising kind of your MO? Do you get on the phone from home, or you kind of, when you get woken up here, are you going to these scenes far away? Like, how does that all work out?
It really depends. The big determinant, of course, is geography. Ontario is a vast region, and it would be impossible for me to respond to calls a great distance away. I have flown up on one occasion for a lengthy call in Thunder Bay at the request of the Thunder Bay Police. I have traveled in the middle of the night to London, Ontario, everywhere within the GTA. I've been in Peel and Durham, York. I go down to Niagara Falls on occasion when they ask for my presence on these calls. Halton. But most OPP calls are with the phone, over the phone, and we have very good negotiators in our province, and they know me because I've either taught them, and I will be consulted over the phone. And on the rare occasion, if I do show up at a scene and it's requested, even though I'm not really supposed to. And they were to advise the crisis negotiators on scene. On the rare occasion, they'll want to talk to a doctor. They'll want to talk to a psychiatrist, and I will get on and talk to them. But again, that's not that common. Last time I had to go somewhere was, I think, a month ago. Barrie Police called me in the afternoon. We had phone calls throughout the afternoon, and finally in the evening, the critical incident commander, because in the command triangle, the person who essentially makes the decisions as to whether I show up or not are not the negotiators. It's the incident commander. And there was a request for me to go up to that jurisdiction an hour north of Toronto. And I phoned, as is my practice, what I'm supposed to do. If it's a reasonable hour, my staff sergeant, and I will let the POC know, the Provincial Operations Center know, because if I'm being deployed anywhere, under any circumstance, I let the POC know so they know where I am. And the sergeant said, hey, True is taking over for the municipal force, and our negotiators are going to be there. So there was a transition from the municipal force to the OPP. It went very smooth. And then working with the municipal force over the phone to actually be on site with our people. And the individual surrendered at 4:30 in the morning. But good work by both the negotiators from the municipal force, but also by our negotiators as well. And it was a smooth transition of both the tactical teams and our negotiation teams. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I find it intellectually challenging, but it's the longer ones that are the most nerve-wracking, especially if there are hostages involved or weapons involved. A couple years ago, I got called out by Peel, and it was an individual who had taken over a floor in the doctor's building adjacent to a general hospital in Peel. And as I'm driving out and I'm being briefed by the head negotiator from Peel Police, I said, oh my God, I did a threat assessment on this guy for Toronto Police, I think in 1995. I couldn't remember the name, but I remembered the circumstances. And indeed, it was that same person. And this is like 25 years later. So I could bring some of my background knowledge about this guy. And because he lived in Calgary, I could phone my counterpart in Calgary Police and get information that would assist the team in Peel. And ultimately, the fellow who had 30 days worth of food, 2 camp stoves, Wi-Fi, 2 long guns, 2 handguns, to the best of my recollection, he said he was going to be there for 30 days until his demands were met. But ultimately, the negotiators for Peel did a fantastic job, and he surrendered. It started at 7 in the morning. He surrendered, I think, just close to 1 the next morning. So it wasn't a 30-day standoff.
It's amazing work you do, Peter. We've already said that. I've got a personal question here for you. We know that PTSD is a thing with our police officers and our first responders and our military people. You've seen your share of very scary situations, a few of which you've described here. A lot of stress. How do you look after your own personal well-being with this type of work?
I get asked that a lot, and it's mainly because not just a type of work, but I'm also an expert in post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of my experience came from being in the military, and I was the only psychiatrist in the reserves in the entire Canadian Forces at one point for about a 10-year period. I did 2 deployments in Afghanistan. I'm not on the wellness side of the house for policing, and I'm not going to get into the politics about that. I do get police officers who will contact me sort of off script, so to speak. They will call me because they don't want to see people associated with their respective wellness units. And I will see them and make recommendations and refer them off. I only have a few patients. My OHIP billings actually only come to about 3 hours a month, if that. But there are different contributing factors to PTSD. It's a complex illness. Frankly, I'll be political here. I think it's a real illness, but it's a real disorder, but it's overdiagnosed. And I think people take advantage of it and will blame certain misadventures as to due to their PTSD. I've testified in some lingered PTSD cases in California where people will commit a serious offense like murder, and because they served in, as the Americans like to call it, Iraq or Afghanistan, the defense will say, oh, they have PTSD, and they don't. But there's various components. It's multifactorial. It depends on resilience. It depends on early exposure. But I think there's a genetic component to it as well. My mother is a Holocaust survivor. She doesn't have PTSD. And am I troubled by certain cases? Yeah. But does it meet the threshold of PTSD? Never. Has it even, a lot of the responses, and this is where people get it wrong, post-critical incident, they're normal. It's normal for people to respond with certain behaviors or thoughts, or ruminate, insomnia, having anxiety, survivor guilt. But for most people, those resolve, and it's normal. A problem with critical incident stress debriefing is that it pathologizes what is normal. And evidence-based medicine, all the studies of critical incident stress debriefing show that it potentially can do more harm than good. So you can't treat everyone who goes through a critical incident as though they're going to have a problem. And there are different ways of addressing people post-incident, like what we did in the military, which prevents people from moving on past an acute anxiety disorder to getting post-traumatic stress disorder. I remember with the Bernardo case, when the tapes were turned over by Mr. John Rosen, who at that time was the defense lawyer for Paul Bernardo, a very nice guy, turned over the tapes to the police. I was the guy who analyzed these tapes, and I started to, people were scrutinizing the fact that they thought I was going to end up being psychologically damaged from seeing those tapes, and I've seen other awful things as well. But if you exercise, you have outside interests, you have hobbies, you have a core group of friends within the policing profession, but also have a core group of friends outside the policing profession. I've managed to, I think, others may disagree, I think I've managed to exit this career as an operational forensic psychiatrist with the police and still be psychologically intact, or at least I think so. I don't want to be critical about, as I said, PTSD is a serious illness, and it is a real illness, but it's often exaggerated for secondary purposes. And that takes away from the people who actually do have legitimate PTSD. And I've seen and treated those people both in policing and in the military.
Thank you for that, Peter. Very interesting. We're getting towards the end of our podcast now, and we often ask our guests about 3 wishes for change, and it usually brings about some really interesting comments. What would be your 3 wishes for change if you could make it happen?
I wish I was taller. No, I don't know. Whenever I interview, for instance, in policing, part of my job is interviewing potential agents. And I always ask a potential agent if they had 3 wishes, what they would be. And I'm surprised at some of the answers. I'm taken aback. They're sort of altruistic general wishes. Being a member of the Jewish faith, I hope that there's a resolution and our hostages, or the hostages, both Jewish and not Jewish, that were taken by Hamas, they're released. I wish for, as a Canadian, that we have peace and prosperity in our country, and that we don't go over to the type of wrongful thinking that some of our brothers and sisters in the States have in regards to immigration and the denial of climate change. And I guess the most important one is that I was 14 the last time that the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Cup. I'm going to be 72. I want the Leafs to win the Cup at least one more time before I die. Now, my father was in his 97th year when he passed away. I still miss him. Wonderful guy. So I figure I have another, maybe 25 years to go. But that's another wish.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us, Peter. It's you've been very candid with us here. It's quite an interesting conversation. And you never know who may be listening and can actually help maybe bring those wishes for change into reality. But I hate to break the news to you. I don't foresee the Leafs winning the Cup.
I'm crying now.
Disagree.
I'm crying. I'm in tears. What about being taller?
You know what? That would probably come before the Leafs win the Cup, I would think.
What about a full head of hair?
That could come too. A lot of wishes there.
Can I submit them to the OPPA?
You can. We'll work on them for you.
Can I tell you one story before we stop? When I was in Afghanistan at the Kandahar airfield, we always had to be armed, except when we were in the shower or at the gym. And I would go to the gym, and yes, I would take showers, but usually after the gym. But prominently featured in the gym was a banner of support from the OPPA here in Kandahar. And it, I'm just a contractor, been with the OPP for, close to 3 decades. It was, just over 2 decades at that point. But it made me very proud that the OPPA and the organization, was supporting our troops, and that was, prominently displayed in the gym.
That's a great story, Peter. I know Emily and I are both quite proud to work with the OPPA, and I know they do a lot of great work for a lot of people, and a lot of it goes unnoticed, but that's not what matters. It's the fact that the people that work here are out there helping people, and so important to support our troops for sure.
For sure, and I'm very proud. In 2001, Commissioner Boniface made me an honorary inspector, and I proudly put on. What comes with that is a whole bunch of uniforms, and you have to purchase a mess kit. But whenever I can, I will proudly wear my mess kit and attend the commission officers' events. And very proud to have that mess kit to wear.
So, Peter, one last opportunity. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this conversation before we close it out?
On a serious note, if the Leafs can't win the Cup, another Canadian team, please.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Peter. Much appreciated.
Scott promised me a beverage of my choice, and you're welcome to join us down in Hamilton.
Yes, I'll be there. Both hands open.
And I know this is being broadcast in the new year. We're now in the old year, 2024, and I just want to wish both of you Merry Christmas, all the best for the holidays. And Hanukkah's late this year. It actually starts on Christmas Day, or the evening of Christmas Day. So, Erev Boxing Day, I think it would be called. But so all the best to you and yours. And I'm hoping to keep my OPP email address and my phone once I go over, yet to be determined, to CIB, and still be involved in the game.
Well, thank you, Peter, for joining us today. Thanks for everything you've done over the years and will continue to do, no doubt. We're very grateful.
Take care, Em. Take care, Scott. Always good to talk to you, sir.
You have been listening to Dr. Peter Collins, the Operational Forensic Psychiatrist of the OPP. Episodes will be released monthly on the podcast platform of your choice, on YouTube, and in our oppa.ca website. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay safe.